Well-behaved women seldom make history. The acts of courage, strength, and boldness are often misinterpreted as manifestations of atrocity.
These exact same traits are what the young women of Malolos displayed in 1889, an exhibition of braveness that inspired our national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal, to write a letter that empowered Filipinos back on the day of Spanish colonization up to this modern era. Let's take a trip to memory lane. The education system in the Philippines during the Spanish rule was merely controlled by the Catholic Church. Its main purpose is the indoctrination of religion. By royal decree, the friars were required to teach the Spanish language to the natives, but this was not enforced. This suppression of literacy kept Filipinos in ignorance and in subservience for more than 300 years. To the surprise of everybody, a group of young ladies from Malolos petitioned Governor General Valeriano Weyler for the establishment of a night school to study Spanish under Teodoro Sandico. However, Father Felipe Garcia, the Spanish parish priest who is always on the lookout for subversive activity, objected to the petition, prompting the Governor General to disapprove it. Spanish language lessons back then were considered politically dangerous. Natives who spoke and wrote Spanish were liable to be rebels. As for women who were not confined to convents wanting formal training in the Spanish language, that was unthinkable. The young women continued to push for the establishment of the school and eventually received permission to open their school on certain conditions. First, the women were required to fund the school themselves since the government refused to. Second, their teacher would be Señorita Guadalupe Reyes, rather than Sandico, who had been blacklisted by the friar curate of Malolos. Third, the classes would have to be held in the day and not at night, probably due to the association of nighttime gatherings with subversive meetings. The Spanish language classes endured for 3 months.
It is from this revolutionary triumph that Marcelo H. del Pilar requested Rizal to write a letter addressed to the fearless young women of Malolos.
The letter was originally written in Tagalog. It is so penned by Rizal's pondering on the lack of courage of young women in the Philippines. He stated that he only knew a few women of our country who fits his ideals. He describes Filipinas as plants sown and reared in darkness, having flowers without perfume and fruits without sap. News about the young women of Malolos reached Rizal in Spain, and he was delighted that his ideals of a young woman are met. He admitted that he did not know the town of Malolos and its young women, except for one named Emilia, whom he only knew by name. Rizal stated that his confidence that the country would achieve victory was restored. He is confident that the Filipino woman would no longer bow her head to every unjust order, to smile at an insult, to seek solace in humble tears. His words: "No longer does the Filipina stand with her head bowed, nor does she spend her time on her knees, because she is quickened by hope in the future. No longer will the mother contribute to keeping her daughter in darkness and bring her up in contempt and moral annihilation. and no longer will the science of all sciences consist in blind submission to any unjust order, or in extreme complacency, nor will a courteous smile be deemed the only weapon against insult, or humble tears the ineffable panacea for all tribulations. Back then, Filipinas were expected to embody the fictional character Maria Clara, docile, beautiful, but self-effacing and subservient. Years passed and the Philippines still saw women as mere objects to violate. The letter also reflected how Rizal questioned the teachings of priests, including prolonged kneeling, long prayers, large rosaries, soiled scapulars. He believed that God created all men equal with his own mind, conscience, and will, unchained and free. His words, "You know that the will of God is different from that of the priest, that religiousness does not consist of long periods spent on your knees, nor in endless prayers, big rosarios, and grimy scapularies, but in a spotless conduct, firm intention, and upright judgment. You also know that prudence does not consist in blindly obeying any whim of the little teen God, but in obeying only that which is reasonable and just, because blind obedience is itself the cause and origin of those whims, and those guilty of it are really to be blamed." Rizal saw God as the primal source of all wisdom, who does not demand that man, created in his image and likeness, allow himself to be deceived and hoodwinked, but wants us to use and let shine the light of reason with which he has so mercifully endowed us. He compared God to the Father, who gave each of his sons a torch to light their way in the darkness, bidding them keep its light bright and take care of it, and not put it out and trust to the light of the others, but to help and advise each other to find the right path. Rizal wanted Filipino women not to depend on the light of others, but help one another, seek others' counsel, and search for the way. It is presumptuous to rely on one's own judgment, Rizal stated. He said that no one should depend on himself alone. One should seek advice, listen to others, but in the end should be able to comprehend and follow what is most reasonable. Rizal added that to become more presumptuous means dominating others' will, posing as God as if he knowing every manifestation of God's will, and attributing to God everything he says and desires, making his personal enemies the enemies of God. To become more conclusive, Rizal made the satirical statement, "Just buy a priest's robe as the Franciscans wear it and put it on a carabao, and you will be lucky if the carabao does not become lazy on the account of the robe." Youth is a flower bed that is to bear rich fruit and must accumulate wealth for its descendants. Rizal believed that the child of a woman roots from her actions. If a woman would follow the teachings of priests, her child would be the same. If a woman would be courageous enough to seek the light, her child would be brave in protecting his mother, fellow countrymen, and country. Rizal emphasized the role of women who will become mothers in teaching children to think. If women will know nothing aside from praying and kneeling a lot, kissing the hands of priests, throwing money on churches, and believing all the friars sees fit to tell us, then they would model a life of being oppressed to their own children. Instead of liberating their own children, they will be the instruments of their own children's pitfall. According to Rizal, rightful actions taught by God are giving to the needy, helping the poor, and feeding the hungry, and not by being deaf to the entreaties of the poor, stuffing those who are satiated, lavishing money on silver decorations for the altar, and giving alms to the church or the friar. He emphasized that it is vanity and insanity to give money to the friars, which they will only use to further oppress Filipinos. Doing such shows blindness and lack of understanding. Rizal's emotional angst in his letter is deeply rooted in the wrongdoings of friars. Friars were able to gain money through selling of rosaries, scapulars, belts, and other things. They also taught people to give alms to the church for the forgiveness of their sins. He compared these malicious acts with how Christ lived his life. Rizal stated that Christ didn't do any of these things for the forgiveness of people's sins. His words, "Saintliness consists in the first place in obeying the dictates of reason, happen what may. It is acts and not words that I want of you," said Christ. Rizal further stated that if God assumes the role of the friars, then he shall turn his back against God. Rizal invites Filipinos, especially women, to be reasonable and seek for the light. He gave special mention to women and mothers because he believed that they were the ones capable of opening the minds of men. He encourages mothers and women to teach their children to praise the true God and not the one set by friars, to teach their children to seek for the truth and not live in ignorance. His words, "Remember that a good mother does not resemble the mother that the friar has created. She must bring up her child to be the image of the true God, not of a blackmailing, a grasping God, but of a God who is the Father of us all, who is just, who does not suck the lifeblood of the poor like a vampire, nor scoffs at the agony of the sorely beset, nor makes a crooked path of the path of justice." He invites all the Filipino women to become like the women of Malolos. Be awakened to be able to prepare children towards a path of being honorable, judged by proper standards, with sincerity and firm purpose, clear judgment, clear procedure, honesty in act and deed, love for the fellow man, and respect for God. Education is the key for honor and prosperity, and this can be brought by mothers themselves to their children. Maria Clara was reincarnated in the image of the Dalagang Filipina, which reinforces women also to be less ambitious, outspoken, and political. The Filipina's womanhood is still threatened by the lingering effects of the Spanish colonization, especially in the form of the Catholic faith. Maria Clara is the idealized image of a Filipina, full of finesse, grace, and dignified beauty. She became the standard when it comes to how a young lady should act, carry herself in public, and interact with men. But her feminine demeanor has been used for so long, often to disgrace fellow Filipinos with how they dress, act, or speak. Now it is time to ask ourselves, does Maria Clara still embody what it's like to be a modern Filipina? According to a study entitled Filipina Next, the modern Filipina is successfully moving in step with the modern world. Today, Filipino women are empowered to assert their place in the society through opportunities to allow them to lead and participate economically and politically. While the study shows that passive and submissive Maria Clara is gone, Filipinas are still guided by faith and strive to be good mothers and daughters, but have the courage to unleash an independent mind, ideas, creativity, and passion. As Rizal hoped for, the modern Filipina is someone who is not restricted by the constructs of society. She is someone who defines who she is and fights for the things she stands for. Some influences on the modern Filipina are from mass media and social networking sites. Now, do you think that posting scandalous TikTok videos and offensive tweets still reflect the liberation of a modern Filipina? Do you think Rizal would be happy of how the modern Filipinas portray themselves?
There's much more to learn about Rizal's aspirations for the Filipino women. What was discussed was just the first part of the letter, and on the latter part, Rizal elucidates further how Filipino women could achieve liberation. Because of the great impact of the young women of Malolos in the year 1889, an organization called the Women of Malolos Foundation Incorporated, or the WOMFI, was established. And up to this date, the organization has been active in civic engagements in the community. As teachers, we must remember our role is to help learners achieve freedom, may it be in the classroom, their own homes, and generally in life. But at the same time, we must compel our learners in understanding that freedom comes with responsibility. And as Rizal imbibes, the responsibility is to serve God and the country. Cheers to the strong women. May we know them. May we be them. May we raise them. Thank you for listening.